Hi there, in this episode we're going to focus on the Declaration of Independence. Now, we need to back up a little bit before we can get to the Declaration. We need to first talk about the Continental Congresses. There's two. The first Continental Congress is going to meet in 1774. And really it is a reaction to the coercive acts or the intolerable acts that Great Britain put upon the colonies after the Boston Tea Party. The Continental Congress in all, though, lasts from 1774 to 1789. And their whole purpose was they were basically our government in the 13 colonies, and they're the ones that are going to lead us through the revolution. Now, the Second Continental Congress is much more important than the first. It occurs in 1775, and it's convened or held really during the Revolutionary War. The war's been going on already, and they're going to create several different important documents in the Second Continental Congress. The one is really going to be, the most important is going to be the Declaration of Independence. There's going to be that 5-year period of time where we're going to be ruled through the Articles of Confederation. And that too is going to be put in place by the Second Continental Congress. It's not going to be replaced until 1789 when we write the Constitution. Now, in order to understand what's happening with the Declaration of Independence, you got to put it in the time frame of what's happening. We had already been fighting the Revolutionary War for a whole year. And the war is going to start in 1775. We're not going to declare independence until 1776. So there was really a split amongst the American colonists. Many American colonists were actually loyalists, people who did not want to separate from England. And it's really going to divide Americans over what we should do about this war and what we should do about our predicament with Great Britain. Now, many loyalists start writing about the cause. By far the most famous of those writings during the Revolution is by Thomas Paine. He wrote Common Sense, and his whole point was to convince loyalists, convince American colonists why we needed to break away from England. So in his pamphlet, he talks about what a tyrant King George III is, how he's infringing on our natural rights. He talks about how the authority of the king needs to be challenged. The consent of the governed is really the key to this. And that if the king is not governing fair and wisely, then it's the necessity of the people to rise up. At first, he publishes Common Sense anonymously, so he's not prosecuted by the British for treason, because he's literally suggesting that we declare our independence. Much of his writing is based on Enlightenment ideas, pushing for why we need independence. Now, when it comes to back to the Second Continental Congress, they're going to also start talking about independence. So they create what's called the Committee of Five. And they picked 5 different members of the Continental Congress to basically draft a Declaration of Independence. Those 5 people were Thomas Jefferson, Ben Franklin, John Adams, Roger Sherman, and Robert Livingston. Those 5 made up the committee. Jefferson, though, is going to be doing the vast majority of the writing, however. Now, the Declaration of Independence itself includes several core ideas, not so much about what a government, it doesn't set up a government. It talks about what role a government should have and what relationship it should have with the people. Make sure you realize this did not set up our government. It's just kind of an outline about what we're thinking. It really is the ultimate breakup letter. Really, we talk about first what a government should look like, and then we go on to list dozens of problems that we're having with Great Britain. It really does focus, though, on specific natural rights, those inalienable rights. Life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness is what is changed based on John Locke's ideas. And it really talks about the government and the abuse of power that we see that the English are conducting. It's very much influenced by the Enlightenment thinking. And you can see John Locke all over it. He had a great influence on Jefferson. And there's a lot of really, really important ideas coming from Locke in there. The Declaration of Natural Rights is a big one. When we look at words from the actual Declaration of Independence, lines like people are endowed by their creator by certain inalienable rights. Jefferson is bringing that from John Locke. Governments are instituted among men to secure these rights. Again, more influence of the Enlightenment, more mention of natural rights. It also talks a lot about the role of government. And he's going to fixate on the social contract and the consent of the governed. So in the Declaration, it says government derives their just powers from the consent of the governed. That is straightforward Enlightenment thinking from John Locke. Another quote from the Declaration: whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it and institute new government. Again, we're talking about the consent of the government. If the governed do not agree with the government they are given, it is their duty, their responsibility to rise up and change it. From there, we go on to a long list of grievances that we have against Great Britain. And they kind of run the gambit from closing our legislatures to obstructing our courts. The king and parliament fired judges that didn't rule his way. They were quartering British troops in colonial homes. Of course, the whole issue of taxes, and even the idea of no trial by jury. All of these things are brought up in the Declaration. When Jefferson takes the Declaration back to the Continental Congress, they do make changes to his original writing. The biggest one is Jefferson had attacked the institution of slavery, blamed that on the British as well, and really called for an end to slavery. Continental Congress, though, is going to remove that. Slavery was a huge economic issue, and it's eventually going to help lead to the Civil War. They're going to vote on the Declaration on July 4th, 1776, and of course that becomes Independence Day, that day when the Continental Congress approves the Declaration. The big part of this, though, that kind of gets overlooked, one of the reasonings behind it isn't so much the lofty ideas that are put out in the Declaration, but rather just really the logistics of it, the nuts and bolts, the practicality of it. Because we're fighting a war against the biggest military on the planet, we really needed some help. And to get that help, we're going to have to turn to other countries. In order to be taken seriously by those other countries, though, and gain their help, we need to declare our independence. They want to make sure that we're not going to just stay with England. So it's really going to be one of the more practical reasons behind the Declaration of Independence. Okay, that's it for now.